Hell yes. One of the worst things the British Empire ever did was to build a hedge across the Indian Ocean. The reason why they did this was to stop the movement of salt across land. Salt was extremely vital, particularly in a hot country like India, and the British wanted to control the amount of salt that the Indians could have access to by highly taxing it, but also knowing that salt was very integral to their diet, and in particular to vegetarians like Hindus who would eat cheese and stuff. But this was a big control issue, the control of salt. Now, salt is vital life, and until very recently, a big deal was made about the medical profession about cutting out the salt in your diet. And people used to stop taking salt because they were told it would give them high blood pressure. The reason why they had high blood pressure is the salt was making their hearts work too good. The salt is part of the electrical system of your body. Your electromechanical aspects of your body are highly dependent upon salt for the transmission of electricity through your nervous system, through your pulmonary system, to your brain. And they were telling people, and also your joints, the lack of movement. When you don't consume salt, you literally seize up mentally and physically. And so this is why from a very early on, salt was a commodity that empires and control grids wanted to restrict and make sure that they had complete control over. And that's why you had salt wars and salt things like that. And that's why the British built the hedge across India to stop the Indians having free access to salt. In fact, when the Indian independence movement was at its height under Mahatma Gandhi, one of the most symbolic aspects, and it was an act of sorcery by the way, was to walk to the sea and Indians make their own salt. It was a way of actually dealing with the wickedness of the empire and its oppression of India. India being a magnificent country before the British Empire basically destroyed it. Now, well, it's coming back now, but it basically destroyed it. But the same way it followed the Roman model of going in there and co-opting local kings. And that's why you had the British Raj. They didn't need a lot of troops. All they had to do was take care of the aristocratic class of all the different Rajas, and from that they controlled India. Now, in terms of sorcery, salt is used a lot. We all know about the magic circle. The magic circle is purified with salt. The exterior is always salt. If they're not using salt, you're not in a magic circle. You're actually in grave danger. Now, the salt is significant because it's a crystalline substance that humans can deal with, actually mammals deal with. It's like the crystal that lives within us. It's a soluble crystal that passes through our bodies. The entities can't deal with it. This is why you don't get entities in salt water. You get real monsters in salt water. You get things like giant squids and actual monsters in the deep that we haven't discovered yet. Been like giant serpents and stuff that's been noted by our ancestors. But you don't, in like the likes of Loch Ness and Lake Champlain, they're not monsters in there. They're elementals, and it's because it's fresh water. You've seen my other video about how Crowley basically created the Loch Ness monster by accident. And this is why water is also part of the story as well, but that's for another video. Now, the salt is extremely important for that reason. It creates a barrier because it not only protects the magic circle exterior, but also protects the magus or the witch, because there's the salt, the crystals is going through them. Now, a word about different kinds of salt. The only salt that does this is sea salt, organic sea salt, and the best sea salt in the world is ironically in the Dead Sea, in Israel. But you can what you call this Himalayan salt is no good because it comes from the mountains. It's also mined in a very brutal way. It's extracted just like crystals with heavy machinery, and it suffers from shock. You've got to have sea salt, organically processed sea salt taken from the ocean. This is the only salt that works. And the salt that you get in your table salt at home, that's also mined by heavy machinery under the ground. So salt is vital. Now, the conspiratorial thing of why they were telling people not to take salt is something that does kind of concern me. It's like, why were they telling people not to take the stuff of life? You know, it's like telling people not to take salt, and they weren't only just telling people not to reduce their salt, but they were actually in some cases telling them to almost cut out and try to get salt from other substances. In fact, one of the big things that was a great destroyer of the butter thing in the 80s, the 70s and 80s was not only the margarine companies, you know, selling you plastic to eat, but also, and transestrogens, but also the rot your brains and causes Alzheimer's and changes your sex, but also causes it also there's the salt in butter. Butter tastes at its best when it has salt in it. So then we had this reduced salt butter, and then we had flora and all these. I don't believe it's not. I can't believe it's not. But all these poisonous spreads that they're horrible things. So I mean, salt is vital, vital for life, and you must get it from the sea. In fact, I was on holiday once in Italy, and they would dress salads by simply washing them in fresh seawater, and it was absolutely delicious. The green leaves of the tomatoes with the taste of seawater on them. So, and that's why salt is integral to sorcery and magic, because we are in many ways vessels for salt. There's lots, this is, I think the Bible as well, Lot's wife turning to a pillar of salt. This is another one thing. The Abrahamics they're like anti-nature and anti-human in many way. She gets punished by being turned to the stuff of life. So you think about that one, about the salt thing, and let that sink in there, because salt is something you must be very careful of how you consume it. It's organic sea salt, the highest quality you can actually afford, and then again, then remember that you're actually taking into your body a crystalline substance that's flowing through your body and making your internal electrical system work. So take care, all the best.